What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you again. I apologize for my voice as I am on the back end of this sickness right now, and it's now like it's transitioned into like congestion, cough, no voice. Yesterday was bad, 1-2. What can you do? Miami Dolphins, yeah, fuck them. I was wrong on the side on every single Thanksgiving game. I fucking hate Thanksgivings like that. College basketball, 1-1. BYU, I mean, they had a chance to do it. They were winning for a large portion of the game, I think, but it was pretty close. And then it looked like they were going to do it. I think they were up 4 in the final couple of minutes and blew that. Wound up going into overtime. They had a really bad overtime period and they lost. UC Irvine was an easy win. And that's just the way it goes. Miami Dolphins, they couldn't get anything going on the ground, man. I think they finished the game on like a 14-3 run. Tua, the guy who can't play in the cold, Tua had a pretty good game in that game, but they just got nothing going on the ground. So they were a one-dimensional offense. It's just the way it goes. I'm going to talk about today, man. There's a stacked card today. I got 2 college basketball plays, 2 college football plays, 1 NHL, and I'm skipping the entire NBA card just like it's a pussy, and I'm skipping the NFL game. There's no way I want to get involved in this Black Friday NFL game. This is one of the ugliest games that you could possibly find. I mean, no thanks. So let's talk about college basketball first, I suppose. Get that out of the way, because it's the most boring right now. It's one of my favorite sports. It's just, man, there's a whole lot to talk about here. Providence and Indiana. I'm going to try to hit some of these real quick. Providence, they just lost to Davidson as a favorite. So I'm thinking that maybe Providence is going to bounce back from that. I mean, Davidson, they're not a bad team, and they're pretty good programs still. We know they used to have Steph Curry, whatever. They're not as good as they were then, but they're still a pretty respectable program. Providence was coming off their first loss of the season against Oklahoma. So you could take this 2 ways. I think you could say, well, the one time Providence really stepped up and they played like a big conference team, they lost. So that's not a good sign. But I think the Davidson loss was because they were hung over from that first loss against Oklahoma. So, and that was as an underdog. So, are they going to bounce back here against Indiana? Maybe. I mean, Indiana's coming off a tough couple of games here, although they did lose both of them against Louisville and Gonzaga. I think Indiana is showing that they're not as good as what their ranking is. So that's another one of the factors here. I think Indiana's way overranked right now at 14. Ken Baum has them like in the 50s or 60s. Indiana's not nearly as good as what their ranking would suggest. And when they've stepped up in class, they have not done well. So they're coming off kind of a tougher game, I guess, against Gonzaga, but Gonzaga kind of blew them out. So I think we're just kind of seeing what Indiana really is. I don't think Providence is that great either, but I would lean to the Providence side in this one just because I think Indiana is overranked. They're up from 4-4 with juice, 71% of the tickets and 54% of the cash. So the market appears to be in agreement with me on that one in taking the points with Providence to bounce back. And if you do like that side, at least Providence is a team that kind of likes to slow the pace down. So that's more conducive to covering a number like that as an underdog. And that is in the Battle for Atlantis tournament, which is in the Bahamas, as these early season tournaments start coming to an end here. And a lot of the college basketball teams are going to go on break. Thankfully, I get a little bit of a break from having to handicap all of this. What's up, Jacob? What do I think? What? I don't know what you're saying, man. Do I think ink? I'm not sure what you're saying, bro. All right, what else we got here for college basketball? Boston College, I will say, I think they're kind of in a sandwich spot here. I mean, they just pulled off a pretty nice win over Boise as an underdog. Boise, pretty good program. BC was a 9.5-point underdog in that game. Now they have to face this bad Ivy team at Dartmouth with an SEC team at the very least in South Carolina up next. So South Carolina's not very good, but BC, I mean, that could be at the very least a letdown spot for them, but the market looks like it is on the BC side here, indicating on their side, up from 15.5 to 16.5 with juice. 98% of the cash on them and 50% of the tickets evenly split. So I will not attempt to fade Boston College and fade the market sentiment on that one. But just something interesting of note to point out there. Pittsburgh and Ohio State. This is an interesting one, man, because Pittsburgh as I mentioned, when they played Wisconsin, I think Pittsburgh's flying under the radar. I think they're a pretty good team this year. Ken Baum has them still ranked in like the teens. I think he actually has them ranked higher than Ohio State, but the issue is they're coming off their first loss of the season, and that was their first big step up game. I lost on that one. I thought it was one of those like ranking versus odds maker disparities here where Pittsburgh was laying points as an unranked team against a ranked Wisconsin team. Pittsburgh started off the game real nice. They were dominating the entire first half, still leading into the second half, and then wound up blowing the game. So I was pretty pissed about that. That was on Sunday, I think. But does that mean Pittsburgh's going to be in a hangover spot now because that was their first loss of the season? That was a big step-up game. I don't know, because Ohio State, I mean, they're a good program as well, so they're not really a team that you're necessarily going to overlook. Although Ohio State's just coming into this game off of a bunch of pretty easy wins in a row where they've just been blowing out teams of lower caliber. So Ohio State does have the momentum aspect of this, but I do think that Pittsburgh is still being undervalued to some extent. But Ohio State's up from 4.5 to 5, 80% of the tickets, 90% of the cash. So tough to gauge here. I think the market is indicating on the Ohio State side. I would agree that the situation calls for the Ohio State side, but laying that many points, and I think this is a neutral site game, right? Or is it at home? No, it might be in Columbus. It's got to be. Yeah, it's in Columbus. Otherwise, Ohio State would not be that much of a favorite because, as I said, I think Ken Baum actually has Pittsburgh a little bit higher than Ohio State. So that being the case, I think Ohio State's probably laying too many points as far as the value is concerned. So even though I do think the situation is against Pittsburgh here, I still think Pittsburgh is maybe being undervalued by the number a little bit there. So that's a tough one to read as well. What's up, Charles? Scott, my dudes, what's going on? Will, what's up? Morning, man. Hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving, by the way. Hope it was better than mine, betting-wise, at the very least. My Thanksgiving was interesting as we kind of had, like a smaller affair because of what's going on with my aunt and health issues and whatever. So it sucks, but what can you do? I still got to see some family there and have some good food while I was losing everything in college football, or not college football, in NFL, in football, and whatever. But what can you do, man? Arizona, West Virginia. This is another one of those ones in the stupid battle for Atlantis that seems to never end. I don't know what to think about this because Arizona just lost. I think, did they get upset in this one by OU? I think they did, yeah. Arizona was a 7.5-point favorite in that one. They lost to Oklahoma, so arguably they're going to be in a bounce-back spot here. Arizona, their record doesn't look good at 3-3, but look at their losses, man. On the road to Wisconsin, and then they lost to Duke, where I did think that was a good spot for them to bounce back, though. And then Oklahoma, I mean, it's not like they've lost to any bad teams, really. West Virginia, I mean, they're coming off a couple of big games in a row where they pulled off that crazy overtime upset against Gonzaga, and then they went into overtime again and lost to Louisville, also as an underdog. So West Virginia's coming off back-to-back overtime games. So I think maybe West Virginia is going to run out of gas in this one. So I would look to the Arizona side in this one. Arizona's sitting at 6.5, 82% of the cash on them, 56% of tickets on the West Virginia side. Because, again, I think the public is coming in and saying, well, West Virginia has the better record. They beat Gonzaga. So obviously, if I'm getting 6.5 points, I got to take that, right, against Arizona. I'm going to say no. I disagree with that. So I think West Virginia, it's a tough spot for them, man, coming off back-to-back overtime games like that. The one thing about this is that West Virginia also plays a slow tempo. So I know Gonzaga likes to speed up the tempo, and West Virginia still was able to beat them. But at some point, man, if they get sped up by another team, I think they're going to die, basically. And Arizona is a team that likes to speed up the pace. And Arizona is in the bounce-back spot there. So I like the Arizona side in that one. I'm actually tempted to kind of play it right now. What does Ken Baum have as the number on this? I might still wind up skipping it, but man, it's kind of tempting. He's got Arizona 25th in the country. He's got them winning this game by 6. So that's kind of right in line with it. He's got West Virginia down at number 60. Whoo, boy. I'm thinking about it right now. Let me see. I'll stay off of it because West Virginia at least still has reason to at least focus on this game. I just think they're going to run out of steam, man. So I do like the Arizona side in that one. When you get a team that's the better team, like Arizona, they should be in a focus spot this time. It's not really something you want to fade. So that's how I look there. NC State was coming off a potential revenge spot against Purdue, which I forgot to mention that yesterday. I think I forgot to mention that was a tournament revenge angle there where NC State got eliminated by Purdue in the Final Four, I believe, last year. I think maybe I did mention that. A lot of the guys, I think, are gone from those teams, but NC State had the chance for revenge. They lost. That was their first loss of the season in like a step-up game against Purdue. I mean, the game wasn't really close, but coming off of that, I do think NC State could be a little bit hungover, and BYU, as we know, lost for me yesterday, but that was also their first loss of the season against a ranked Ole Miss team, and it was a tough game that went into overtime. So both teams are kind of in similar spots in that regard. So I don't want to have anything to do with this game. I'm just going to stay off of it. In a way, I could see the argument for BYU being in the slightly better spot because they lost as a favorite, so they could be more in a bounce back spot, whereas NC State was kind of, they were playing a team that's like above their pay grade, basically. But I don't know. BYU's up from 4.5 to 5.5, but very public. 93% of tickets and cash. So I don't know what to do with that game, to be honest. Scott, thank you, sir. And this is in the Rady Children's Invitational, by the way, in San Diego, California. As I also mentioned yesterday. One thing I forgot to mention yesterday, by the way, with the Dolphins and Green Bay games, that Matt LaFleur, Green Bay's coach, is actually really bad in Thursday night games as well. He was like, I think he was like 1-6 in Thursday night games. And I think he was like 1-4 or something at home in Thursday night games. So even the home advantage you have in Thursday night had passed him by. So he's not a good coach on Thursday. And still, I lost that game on Miami. I'm kind of pissed about it. What can you do, man? All right, what else we got for college basketball? Man, I mean, New Mexico State, I looked at this and I'm like, man, New Mexico State, they're coming off a couple step-up games against Dayton and UNLV. Those are pretty big games, and now they're stepping down in class and facing Pepperdine. But could they be in like a hangover spot coming off two big games, hanging with UNLV as an 11.5-point underdog? This game was close, man. This was a game within one possession in the final couple minutes of the game. So, yeah, I think they could be in a hangover spot. It's just a matter of Pepperdine sucks. Are they going to be able to do anything here? And this is a neutral site game. I think it is in California, right? No, it's in Arizona. I don't even know, man. It's in Tempe at the Mullet Arena, which I don't know if that's Arizona State's arena or what it is, but man, I don't want to try to take a shot on Pepperdine. They're just so bad. But New Mexico State's down from 5.5 to 4.5. 67% of tickets, 93% of the cash. So interesting. The line is suspiciously short there too. So it's almost like the odds makers almost look like they're begging you to play New Mexico State, a team that looked pretty good against some good teams recently. And Pepperdine, a team with a terrible record. So I don't know, man. So I would not want to lay the points with New Mexico State there. I will say that. I don't know if you guys can hear the stupid train outside. I don't know. There are trains going through on weekdays. They go through and make a lot of fucking noise. I don't know. It fucking annoys me. Let me see. Oklahoma and Louisville. I mean, that's the other side of that matchup I was just talking about. This is in that battle for Atlantis, I think, right? Yeah, in the Bahamas. Oklahoma, I mean, they're coming off a big upset of Arizona. Big as far as, like, they beat a ranked Arizona team, so that's pretty big. Louisville, I mean, they're coming off a win in overtime against West Virginia, although they did it as a favorite. I don't know what to think about this. And this might be is this the final in the tournament now? I'm not even sure, but both of these teams have won every game that they've played in the tournament so far. So it's not like either team is going to like be in a letdown spot there. Because once you get so far in one of these preseason tournaments, I think you're trying to just kind of win the tournament at that point. And both of these teams are teams that you would show up to play for, or to play against. Louisville's up from 1.5 to 3.5. Oklahoma's public with 71% of tickets, 94% of the cash on them. But it looks like the actual cash has driven the line up on Louisville. So I think the actual money is on that side. I can't say I would necessarily disagree with that because Oklahoma pulled off the upset yesterday, so that could potentially put them in a little bit more of a letdown spot if there is one in a tournament like that, whereas Louisville had a close call as a favorite, so I would slightly lean to the Louisville side in that one if there was a side to be had there. And then Ole Miss Purdue. This might be the only game between two ranked teams today. As I mentioned, both of these teams are coming off wins yesterday. Ole Miss, I mean, they had a more difficult time of it against BYU as they were an underdog and they wound up winning in overtime and beating me yesterday. So Ole Miss, I mean, they have to step up again in class here to face Purdue. So this is going to be the most difficult opponent they've faced on the year. They have not faced that difficult a schedule so far. So what I'm saying is that I probably expect them to not be able to beat Purdue. Purdue, coming off an easier win basically over NC State. I don't know if they're going to be looking ahead to the start of like Big Ten play or anything like that, but a lot of these teams have conference play starting after this. Purdue is actually down from 4 to 2.5, so the market actually looks like it's indicating on the Ole Miss side. I would not really agree with that. 57% of tickets and 88% of the cash on Ole Miss. You can Ole Miss me with that one because I would not be taking the points with Ole Miss in this one. I lean towards the Purdue side in that one. It looks like you're getting a nice value number on Purdue there, but do I want to really fade the market read in this one? Nah, I don't really want to do that. Stacks, what's up, man? The slump has resumed after yesterday. What else? Got to regather my thoughts here. I don't know if I was going to talk about too many of these other games. I mean, as far as this Davidson game here, another one in the battle for Atlantis. I mean, Davidson, they're off to a nice start, 5-1, but they lost their like biggest step-up game against Arizona, and most of their wins have come against bad teams. And then they did pull off an upset yesterday, as I mentioned, against Providence as a 5.5-point underdog. So not a huge upset, but an upset nonetheless. And now they have to face Gonzaga. And the issue with this is that Davidson, I mean, they don't like to play as fast a pace, I don't believe, as some of these other teams do. Let me see. Where are they at in pace? Yeah, they're slow, 201 in tempo and KenPom. So the one time they face a team that really like drives the pace is this Arizona game. They got blasted in that game. So combine that with the fact that they might be in a little bit of a letdown spot. Although, are you really in a letdown spot when you're facing Gonzaga? I mean, it's not like you're going to not focus on Gonzaga. Yeah, but I mean, I just think they're going to run out of steam here. And I don't know if Davidson can handle teams that are way better than they are and that can run the tempo like this because they really did bad against Arizona. So this could be a repeat of that where Gonzaga is another team that likes to really push the pace. So I would lean to the Gonzaga side in this one. Gonzaga, yeah, I mean, they beat Indiana yesterday. I mentioned Indiana's not anywhere near as good as what their ranking would suggest, so that win isn't as good as it looks. They do have Kentucky up next, but it's not for a long time, so I don't think Gonzaga is just going to not show up for this game. So that's the way that I would look there. They're sitting at 19.5, 67% of tickets, 82% of the cash, though some more of the cash on Gonzaga. It is a large line to be laying, though, so I don't know that I quite want to get involved in that, but that is the way that I would lean if I was going to play the side in that game. Let's get to my actual plays here in college basketball. First play is Maine plus 4.5. I know I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but I think this is a letdown spot for Elon. Elon Musk, man, he's going to finally lose. This is up from 2.5 to 4.5 on Elon. I don't know if I ever expected to see Elon be that much of a favorite against almost anyone, although I know Maine isn't that good. Elon looks like they're improving. I mean, they've been not very good since they've been in Division One. They've been one of the bottom teams in Division One for a while, but now they look like they're actually playing fairly well. They've been pretty competitive, actually, but they're coming off their first, like, big win. This is one of the biggest wins in their program's history, man. They just beat Notre Dame on the road as 15.5-point underdogs. I think they're in a major letdown spot after this, man. And they had to pull off a comeback because they were losing in the middle of this game, basically by like 6, 7, 8 points throughout the middle of that game. And in order to do that, they shot an really unsustainably high percentage here. 57.1% from the field, 46.7 from three. I think that's unsustainable, man. Oh, and by the way, we do have some of these games tipping off right now. Not the games that I'm playing, but some of the college basketball games are at 11. And I got to get done with this video because college football starts at 12, and I do have a play in the 12 noon slate. So I will get to that quickly. But Elon, yeah, like I said, I mean, I think they played well above their pay grade here. They're not going to be able to sustain shooting percentages like this. So I expect a letdown from Elon here. Coming into this game against Maine, they're coming out of South Bend, and now this game is in some neutral site. I don't know what this is. The Cathedral Classic Invitational. This is at the Palestra in Philadelphia, which I don't know if that's where the Sixers play or what it is, but I think Maine is the side here. Maine, I mean, they have not faced that easy a schedule, really. I think they've faced a more difficult schedule than Elon has, because Maine faced Duke, although, of course, they got blasted by Duke, but still. Both these teams do have one game against a far superior opponent that blew them out, so whatever. Maine has been able to beat the lower class teams that they've played, and have lost. All the games that they've lost are teams that are better than Elon. So they lost to Quinnipiac by 3 there, so that's not a bad loss, really. And then losing to Richmond. I know Richmond's probably a little bit down this year, but they're not a bad program. Losing to those teams in close games, that's not an indictment. I think Maine, even though I think Elon is actually a little bit improved this year, I think Maine might be as well, because both these teams usually totally suck ass. Maine has righted the ship as they just pummeled Holy Cross. I mean, Holy Cross is not good, but that was a crazy win. I mean, they blew them out. So I think that's a nice momentum starter for Maine that kind of breaks that losing momentum. That was only, I guess, their second home game. I'm pretty sure that was actually a true home game for Maine. It was. So I like Maine to continue that momentum. I think Elon is in the letdown spot there. So give me Maine plus the points in that one. And I don't know what Ken Palm even has this line that he has Elon at 165 in the country, which is a lot better than where they usually are. He has them as a slow tempo team. He has them pretty bad defensively in the bottom third defensively, although he has them as one of the most unlucky teams, and he has them at 29th in strength of schedule, so they face a pretty difficult schedule. The Maine, he has an 127th in strength of schedule, so that's not that bad either. He's got Maine also kind of a slowish tempo at 199. Maine, 264th in luck, so they've been pretty unlucky as well, and Maine is the better defensive team, according to Ken Palm. So you're getting points. You're getting the better defensive team in Maine. He has Maine at 111 defensively and Elon at 238. So that is a pretty big difference, even though Elon does have the better offense. If you're getting the better defense, the team that they're playing up against is in a letdown spot. It seems like it's probably going to be a slower paced game because both these teams play slow tempos. I mean, that's the type of game I want to look for. So give me the points with Maine in that one, plus 4.5. Yes, my handlers have not asked me to work today, even though the work usually never ends. Northern Iowa plus 2.5 is my other play in college basketball. Let's get right to it, man. I mean, this is one of the types of scheduling spots that I kind of look for here. St. Bonaventure is against Northern Iowa here. St. Bonaventure is sitting at 6-1. Northern Iowa 3-3. So I think the public is going to look at this and think, wait a minute, the line's only 2.5 here, so you're basically just asking me to pick the winner, and it's a 6-1 team against a 3-3 team. Well, that's pretty easy, right? So give me St. Bonaventure, right? Well, I'm going to say no. I think the opposite way here. And Providence and Indiana have tipped off, by the way. So that was the first game I mentioned on the show here. I got in that analysis before the show started, man. I mean, before the game started. St. Bonaventure, they're coming off their first loss of the season to Utah State, and really, they have not beaten anybody that impressive, man. I mean, they've beaten up on a lot of lesser teams, although actually Bryant isn't that bad, but other than that, I mean, not a very impressive slate of opponents. And then they played Utah State, and they did play pretty competitively in this game to some extent. They were winning the game in the second half. Then they did fall way behind, but they actually caught all the way back up, and they got to within 4 points in the final minute. So they did not go away in this game as a big underdog. Well, 6.5-point underdog. So that was a big performance from St. Bonaventure there. And Utah State shot terribly in this game. 34.4% from the field, 21.4% from three. Unsustainable numbers like that. That's like an outlier. Those are really low percentages that no team can really sustain. So St. Bonaventure got a little bit lucky in this game that Utah was shooting so badly. Although you could argue, well, it means St. Bonaventure's defense was really good, man. Yeah, I mean, okay. I tend to see it the other way, but I see that as being Bonaventure's coming off a big game, man, and it was their first loss of the season. And when you're rolling like this and you're not used to losing, that can like stop your momentum, man. So that was a big step up game for them. It was their biggest game of the season so far, and they lost a close one. So I think St. Bonaventure is not in the greatest spot, and they're up against a Northern Iowa team that is used to losing because they've lost a few games. So look at who they've lost to. UC Irvine, who, as we know, UC Irvine's good. I played them yesterday. They're like in the 60s in KenPom's rankings. Wichita is off to a pretty good start this season. They're not a bad team. And I think that might have been a true road game, too. So you don't really expect Northern Iowa to go into Wichita and beat Wichita there. And they played pretty well in that game anyway, only losing by 6 as a 7.5-point underdog. So I think Northern Iowa, they're a little bit better than what their record makes them look. But now they're coming off their ugliest loss of the season to North Texas. They lost by 20 points in this game as a 3.5-point underdog. I mean, it was a big game for them in this NIT tip-off early season tournament, whatever it is, the early season NIT. North Texas, I mean, they are a pretty good team. Northern Iowa was only 3.5-point underdog in that game, but they got embarrassed, man. And when you lose that ugly and you only score 48 points, you're gonna want to turn it around in the next game. And that was just a horrendous game for them. They only shot 23.8% from three. I mean, that's, again, unsustainable percentage. Like, that has to progress back to some sort of mean. And North Texas, 52.9% from three. That's not going to happen again either. So some outlier shooting percentages in that game that contributed to why that game looks like such a blowout. I think it's a bounce-back spot for Northern Iowa here. So give me Northern Iowa, and the market looks like it's heavily indicating on them. Bonaventure is now down from 2 to 1.5 with juice. You can probably still get 2.5 out there. Either way, I would take the points with Northern Iowa. I think they'll win this game outright. 67% of the tickets on Bonaventure, 87% of the cash on Northern Iowa. So big cash versus ticket disparity there, and it looks like reverse line movement going against the public St. Bonaventure there. So again, give me Northern Iowa plus the points in that one for those reasons. So those are the two college basketball plays. That one is at night tonight at 9 p.m. And the Maine game is at 2 p.m. So one afternoon game there. Yeah, what's up, guys? Thank you, Will. Charles, thank you. The juice is like the VIG that you have to pay. So, like, basically, books, in order to make money, they charge you like an extra amount. They charge you 11 to win 10, basically, on if you're playing like a spread bet or a total when something is supposed to be like 50-50. And they're going to try to split the money, basically 50-50 on both sides. But for them to make money, they charge you a little bit extra for that. So, like an extra 10%, essentially. So you have to pay 100 to, you have to pay 110 to win 100, if that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. So as a bettor, you have to overcome that percentage. So you have to actually win like 54% of your bets to actually overcome having to pay that extra amount, basically, if that makes sense. And the juice can change, by the way, like depending on how the book wants to like move the number, because the books are always moving the number based on information that they're getting. A lot of it coming from who's betting and who's betting what. So the books will move the number, but sometimes they don't want to move the number if it's on like a key number. So they'll actually like increase or reduce the juice on one side or another, which sort of means that they're starting to move the number in that direction. But you might see that too. So the juice on some particular side is not always going to be that minus 110. Like it could be minus 120, so you have to pay a little bit more for that side, which is sort of indicating that number is headed in that direction. Or on the other side, it might be reduced juice where you get like minus 105 or maybe even plus 100 on one side, which indicates that usually the money is kind of like coming in on the opposing side to that. I mean, I don't know. It's a little bit complicated once you like understand like what it is. It's just, I don't know. It sort of becomes like second nature, basically. It's really just like the extra price that you have to pay to take that side. And like on this wager talk screen, it kind of shows you like the juice on this one because it says minus 11. That means minus 111 on that one. And that's just whatever. I mean, that's just the consensus number. But obviously, different books are going to have that number slightly differently. So that's why, again, you want to have as many sports books available to you as possible so you can shop the number and you can find the best price on the number that you like. So, unfortunately, by the way, Elon has an extra percentage on them, so I don't like that. I don't like seeing that, man. Extra cash percentage on them, I should say. NBA, I mean, I don't even know if I want to talk about NBA. I just want to kind of knock this out quickly. I don't have any plays in the NBA. NBA was off yesterday. I will say Cavs Hawks is kind of interesting. The Cavs are up from 5 to 6, 66% of the tickets, 79% of the cash on the Cavs. So the money is coming in on the Cavs side. I wouldn't say that I disagree with it. Here's the thing about this. They're at Atlanta, and Atlanta just went into Cleveland and beat Cleveland, giving them their second loss of the season. Big game for Atlanta. Trae Young played out of his mind in that game. I think he had like a record number of assists in that game. He had like 20-something assists in the game. Crazy performance. It was a crazy performance from Atlanta. Atlanta was about a 9.5 point underdog in that moment, which would indicate that this line should probably be about 5.5 or so, which is close to where this line is. This line is basically at like 6. So I think the line is actually in line with what it was yesterday. So the books have not really adjusted it as far as the zigzag is concerned, but I do think this may be a zigzag spot now where Atlanta is going to now be in the letdown spot because they just beat this Cleveland team. Cleveland's going to be pissed and want to go into Atlanta and return the favor and beat them back. So that is the way that I would lean here. The problem is, look who Cleveland has up next. Boston, the only other team that's dealt them a loss this season. So they could be potentially looking ahead to that Boston game, man. So it is possible that Cleveland actually gets caught looking ahead here and has another bad game in a row against Atlanta. We've seen something like that happen before, man. So I don't quite want to do it. If Cleveland had like any other opponent up next, I might be playing Cleveland here. But because it's Boston, I don't really want to do it. But the market is indicating on the Cleveland side there, and I can't say that I really disagree with it. Elon is gay. I don't know, man. I don't know why their name is Elon, to be honest. They're a school in South Carolina. I don't know what they specialize in. I don't know a whole lot about it. And I will say Clippers T-Wolves caught my eye just because the T-Wolves are sitting at like 8-10 on the season now, and the Clippers are 12-8 or something, yet the T-Wolves are up from 5.5 to 6, so the odds makers are still telling you who's actually the better team here. Well, it's Minnesota. The odds makers telling you that, and a lot of times when you see that, and you see a team with a worse record, especially if they're below 500, and the team they're playing is above 500, but the below 500 team is laying 6 points, that's a situation where the public might think there's value on the side of the team with the better record, and I would disagree with that. It looks like the money is coming in on the T-Wolves side. 59% of tickets and 82% of the cash on them. So this is the closest to being a play for me in the NBA, but there's no real like situation here that would lead me to want to actually do it. I mean, the Clippers, they're just kind of rolling along right now. They lost to the Celtics badly, and then they bounced back, beat Washington easily. They are playing their last game of a road trip, though, so that's kind of difficult, I guess, if you're facing a fourth straight road game. But I don't think they're going to overlook Minnesota. I mean, everybody still basically knows that Minnesota's still a good team. They got Anthony Edwards there. I mean, this Minnesota team, they're not bad. Minnesota's lost 4 games in a row. A couple of them ugly. Well, one of them is ugly, Toronto. But Boston, I mean, you can't blame them for losing to Boston by 2 points. Houston in overtime, coming off that Boston game, that was a bad spot for Minnesota. Houston's a pretty good team, too. And then Sacramento's not that bad either. So I'm not ready to indict Minnesota for all those losses. And they're not traveling anywhere. They're just sitting at home. So they could potentially be in a bounce-back spot there. I just don't see it being that strong of a situation. But I like the fact that the market read is opposing what like the public might think there. The market read is sort of telling you to go against the team that has the better record and looks like they might be the better team. So lean to Minnesota in that one. And then Celtics, as we know, they're facing Cleveland next. So are they going to look past the Bulls? It's possible they do, but the Celtics are up from 10 to 11, 86% of the tickets and 99% of the cash on them right now. I don't know if I agree with the cash percentage there, but it looks like the Celtics are public, but it does look like the money has come in on the Celtics a little bit. But I'm not going to play the Celtics when they have Cleveland up next, and they could potentially have one of those games where they just kind of show up and don't care as much against the Bulls there. So thank you, sir. Yes. Yeah, what's up, guys? Good morning to all of you. I don't know if I want to talk about any of these other games. The Thunder Lakers is a weird market read where the Thunder flipped from +1 to -3, 69% of tickets, 63% of the cash. So the cash percentage looks like it's indicating on the Lakers side, as it's less of it is on the Thunder, and the Thunder are public, but the line has moved to the Thunder being a 3-point favorite, and I do think that's probably justified. I think the Thunder are the better team in this one, significantly enough that line, I think, is justified. The problem is Oklahoma City's coming off a big win on the road against Golden State, so are they going to be in a letdown spot? Like, do you have a letdown spot when you have to go in and face LeBron on the road? I don't know. I mean, maybe, because the Lakers haven't been playing that well, so I think that Golden State win is a bigger win, and there was also a road revenge win for Oklahoma State. Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City. So I would actually lean to the Lakers side in this one still, but I'm not going to quite get there with this one either. And the Lakers, I mean, they're returning home from a road trip, although it was a short road trip that only took them to Phoenix and San Antonio, and they were able to get that bounce back win against San Antonio, which will maybe help start some new momentum for them. And this is their only home game before they go back out on the road, although that might mean additional home distractions, because whatever they have to do at home, they have to get done and out of the way before they go back out on the road. So that is a tough read in that game as well. And Sacramento, Portland, I mean, Sacramento, I looked at this game and I was like, man, Sacramento, they're coming off a nice win over Minnesota, although they did break a losing streak, but that's a big win, so it could either help them start some new winning momentum, or it might put them in a letdown spot going into Portland here. But then the issue is that Portland is returning home from a road trip, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, a long road trip that they've been on since Wednesday the 20th, so they've been away from home for a while. So they're going to have to start getting stuff done at home that they were missing out on when they were on the road, so I think it is a distracted spot for Portland. Will they look ahead to Dallas? I don't know, because Sacramento's been playing fairly well as well, even though they are below 500. So maybe it could be a look ahead to Dallas. I don't know. So tough game to gauge there. I don't really want to play on the Kings, though, coming off a win like that over Minnesota. Kings up from 4.5 to 7, so there's got to be maybe some injury issues going on with the Blazers, too, if the line has moved that much. I don't know. 75% of tickets and only 66% of the cash on the side of Sacramento. So Sacramento is public. They're laying, it looks like, more points than maybe they should be. Portland's got, a bunch of guys who may or may not come back in this game. Murray, Robert Williams III, former Celtic, Grant. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know if these guys are going to be coming back or not. Portland, I'm not as familiar with their personnel really either. So, I don't know. But that's just a stay away from me. Let's go over to NHL. Andrew, hopefully you had a better, hopefully you had a good Thanksgiving as well. What am I even saying? I'm thinking of Better Off Dead here. Yes, skip the Lakers is true. Andrew, maybe I should get sick more often if I sound like Alex Jones. Maybe it's based. They're putting the chemicals in the frogs. They're making them all gay. I have the documents to prove it. I will show you the documents right now to prove why I'm betting on these certain plays here. I got to get to college football, man, before these games kick off. I'm just going to give you my play right now, the one that's at noon, and then I'll give you the analysis in a little while. But I am on Wisconsin plus 1.5, and I'll talk about that shortly. But that is the game that I like in the early slate of college football. let me get to NHL. There's just way too much going on here, man. NHL, real quick, I will say I think the Rangers are not in the greatest spot. They're coming off a big game against Carolina, where I think they lost. They're down from minus 145 to minus 144, 85% of the tickets, 67% of the cash. So they are public. Looks like they have less of the cash on them, and the line is moving against them. It's just not a game where I quite want to come in on the Philadelphia side here, but the Rangers do look like they are in a fade spot coming off that big game against Carolina where they lost. I think that was revenge for Carolina, too, so that was a big game for Carolina, too. Rangers facing a second straight road game, but are they really going to – I mean, they might want to avoid going 0-2 on the road trip here, so I don't know, man. So I could see maybe jumping in on Philadelphia here, but I could also see maybe the Rangers actually show up focused here and don't want to have an 0-2 road trip. And Philadelphia is coming off a decent win, overtime win over Nashville, a pretty tough game there. So Nashville is better than what you would think, so I don't quite want to do that one. What else do we have here? And then Carolina coming off that huge win, revenge win against the Rangers, coming off of a win over Dallas, which was also big. But now they have to face Florida. So it's not like they're going to – are you really going to be in a letdown spot when you're facing the returning champs, the team that you really want to beat, even though they wanted to beat the Rangers? I think they also want to beat Florida. So I don't think they're in a letdown spot here, man. If they were facing somebody else, I would say, yeah, they're probably in a letdown spot here. But this is Florida, and Florida just broke that, bad loss streak that they had. They started an ugly stretch there. They lost to mostly good teams in that stretch. They finally got a nice win over Toronto, who's been playing pretty well. So maybe that'll help give them some momentum, propel them out on the road. So I do actually still agree with the Florida side here, but the market looks like it's indicating on Carolina up from minus 128 to minus 157, 68% of the tickets and 96% of the cash on Carolina. So I don't know what to do with this one, man, because I would maybe look to fade Carolina in a spot like this, but it looks like the market is heavily indicating on Carolina. And the one thing I will say is that I do actually think Carolina is probably the better team over Florida, which, I mean, maybe that's not surprising based on what the record looks like this year, but yeah, I mean, that is the case. And then LA, as we know, I played them. They just beat Winnipeg, so they could be in a letdown spot, but they're up from minus 179 to minus 219, 92% of the tickets, 85% of the cash. So they are very public with less of the cash on them, but the line has moved up on them quite a bit. So if you wanted to play Anaheim, I wouldn't necessarily blame you here, but I don't really want to do it. I mean, Anaheim, pretty bad team, but they were able to get a win over Seattle last night, so maybe that'll help push them forward with some momentum, or 2 nights ago, I should say. So I do think the Kings are indeed in a letdown spot here. So you could look to maybe take Anaheim at a puck line underdog price or something like that. Because simply, LA is just in a letdown spot of that game against Winnipeg. Big win over Winnipeg. So I don't know what else to say about that. And then Vegas and Winnipeg. I mean, Winnipeg, I think, is in a bounce-back spot here off that loss to LA. So I do like the Winnipeg side in this one. They're up from minus 105 to minus 113. 56% of tickets, 79% of the cash on Winnipeg. So it looks like the cash is coming in on their side and moving the line on them. Like I said, they're in a bounce-back spot off of that loss to LA, so I do think they're going to show up focused here, even though they have played a bunch of games on the road now at this point, so they might be tiring a little bit, but they did have yesterday off, so I don't know if they're going to have Hellebuck in net again or if they're going to go with Comrie in this one as far as their goaltender rest situation. I don't know, but Vegas, they're returning home from a road trip that they've been on since the 20th, so even though it's not like they're going to overlook Winnipeg, but they still have those return home distractions coming into play here, and they're off a couple of shootouts in a row, including a loss to Colorado in a big game that might kind of disrupt their winning momentum a little bit there. A tough game for them. Tough spot returning home, man, even though, yes, they should be focused on Winnipeg, but still, it's tough to return home like that and not have distractions coming in from being back at home and whatever. So I do like the Winnipeg side in that one. And then Colorado, Dallas. I mean, this one is I don't know. I don't know what to say about this one, man. Colorado, I mean, they just won in a shootout against Vegas, so are they going to be in a letdown spot here? I don't know. With Edmonton up next, that's a big game, but it's not like Dallas isn't also a big game, so I think they still should be focused on Dallas here. I mean, that's still a big matchup between a couple of the best teams in the West, even though Dallas, their record doesn't look as good right now because they've lost a couple games. One of them was to Carolina, though, and then I think maybe they just got hung over in the next game, but now they're returning home from a road trip, and they have Winnipeg up next. Although, are they going to overlook Colorado? I'm not so sure, because Colorado is also a big matchup. So this is also a tough read for me, man, where I think both teams are kind of in bad spots. Dallas in that return home distracted spot. So I would lean to maybe the over in this one. Dallas up from minus 135 to minus 138. 92% of the tickets, 91% of the cash. The total looks like it's flipped from 6.5 juice to the under to juice to the over. So it looks like the market is maybe agreeing with me on an over in that one. And I see two teams like this that, especially, I mean, in this case, they have pretty good offenses too, but and maybe somewhat suspect goaltending in some ways. It could be a situation that lends itself to an over when both teams are in kind of bad spots here, and they might get a little bit tired. My actual play, New York Islanders plus 130. I know this one seems difficult to do. I'm fading Washington. Washington's up from minus 134 to minus 148. I don't like seeing this market read here, man. 63% of the tickets, 92% of the cash. It looks like the cash is coming in on Washington. This is an afternoon game as well, but I think it's a bad spot for Washington, man. At the very least, you're fading. I think you're still fading the public sentiment here at the very least, because what public better is going to be on the Islanders here? But I like the spot. Washington, I mean, yeah, they've been playing really well, but look what they're coming off of, man. They just swept the Florida road trip there, beating Florida, the returning champs, and then beating Tampa 5-4. That's a couple of wins there for Washington. They're coming off a bunch of big games in a row. Colorado, New Jersey, Florida, Tampa. Now they're returning home, although, yeah, it wasn't a long road trip, but it's still a return home spot where you have to kind of get stuff out of the way, home life, whatever. You're facing an Islanders team that might not totally draw your focus. And up next, they have this New Jersey team that's been playing pretty well and who just beat them in their own place. So I think they might be looking ahead to New Jersey, too, for those reasons. It's a little bit of road reversal revenge, potentially, for Washington there. So I think this is a letdown spot, and it's a sandwich spot, man. Letdown and look ahead, it's a sandwich spot. So give me the Islanders plus money there, man. And the Islanders, they're coming off a fairly ugly loss to the Boston Bruins. A couple of ugly losses, but now they get to go out on the road, even though I know it's only one game. It's not the start of a road trip. It's only a single road game. But still, I think when you're losing like that and playing badly, you get to go out, leave home, forget about what the media is saying about you. Just go out on the road, focus on hockey. You get to play a game against a team that you're going to be focused on. Again, give me the Islanders in this one. I don't know who's going to be in net in either of these games because both teams have kind of been alternating between two goalies who are more or less equivalent. So, neither team has a goalie that I think is necessarily way better than the other one. So give me that. Charles, yeah, you don't like New York City? Yeah, man. I mean, neither do I. Alex, I'm better off dead. I don't know if he would ever come on this. What are you doing here, you degenerate? Bombay, yeah, Gordon Bombay, that's right. The best coach of the Mighty Ducks ever. Let's go to college football here quickly now. Oh, man. This is becoming a long video. I wanted to hit a lot of these college football games because these are big games, man. It's rivalry week. Now, I'm just going to try to quick hit these, man, and just give you a bunch of situation aspects real quick. Boise against Oregon State. Boise basically needs to win out. I know they're already in the Mountain West Championship, but I would not want to fade Boise in this spot because if they're going to get into the playoff, they can't really afford to lose to an inferior Oregon State team, so they're still going to have to show up for this game, even though they are already in the Mountain West Championship. This is a lower conference, so the Mountain West winner I don't think automatically gets into the playoff. So if they want to make sure they're going to be in the playoff, they still need to win. So I would not fade Boise. Colorado, you might think they're in a letdown spot here because they lost to Kansas, and that looks like it might ice their season because they have 3 losses, but not so fast because Colorado, I mean, they have an easy game here, and it is senior night, by the way, for both, or senior day for both Colorado and Oklahoma State, or both Colorado and, Boise State here. They're playing their final home games of the season, so that is an extra motivator a little bit, but for Colorado, that's not a dream crusher for them. They're not in the dream crusher scenario because they're in this cluster in the Big 12, and even though it might be a little bit unlikely, they could still get into the Big 12 championship game. And then if they do that and they win that game, they're going to be in the playoff. So they're still not completely out of it yet. So they would have to win and probably get some help here, as they don't have the tiebreaker against any of the other 6-2 Big 12 teams. So it's not likely, but I would not put them in a dream crusher scenario. Wisconsin plus 1.5 is my actual play here. Minnesota, I mean, they're coming off a big step-up game in their senior day against Penn State, number 4 in the country. And Minnesota was in this game almost the whole way, man. They were winning the game in the third quarter. They were down 1 going into the fourth quarter, still within 4 in the final 5 minutes or so of the game. Kicked a field goal to cut it back to 1, and then they just couldn't quite get over the hump. But they played a nice, huge game against Penn State, man. That was a big step-up game for Minnesota. They're already bowl eligible and have been for a couple weeks now, so they're not looking for bowl eligibility. They got to go on the road now after that huge step-up game on senior day. That was one of their big games of the season, man. So I don't think they have a whole lot of reason to show up in this game, even though I know it is a rivalry game. Wisconsin, I know it's been a down season for them, but I don't think they want to not make a bowl here. They were sitting at 5-2, and now they've lost 4 games in a row, and they're at 5-6 now. This is their last shot to get into a bowl game, man, and I think they're going to want to do it here. They're coming off an ugly loss at Nebraska, but that was because they were coming off playing their guts out against Oregon and almost being able to upset Oregon, which would have been a monumental upset. And they played Penn State, Iowa, Oregon all in a row. A couple of brutal defenses there in Oregon, also a pretty brutal game. So they were just in a horrible spot against Nebraska, which I mentioned that on my show. I probably should have played Nebraska, but now they're coming back home. It's senior day for them. Bowl eligibility is on the line here in Minnesota. As I said, really does not have a whole lot to play for here. Wisconsin is the more motivated team. They're at home, and they're getting a 1.5. Give me Wisconsin in this one. Let me see. Minnesota looks like they flipped from +3 underdog to a 1.5-point favorite. I don't understand that. 53% of the tickets and 56% of cash. I don't really agree with that. I like Wisconsin in this one for all the reasons I just said. Give it to me. What else we got? I was just going to try to quick hit these. Miami, Ohio, and Bowling Green. Basically, the loser of that game is going to wind up out of the MAC championship, essentially. So that's a big game for both teams there. So keep that in mind. Ohio has an easier game against Ball State. And basically, if Ohio State wins, they're going to be in the MAC championship. So, but it's a pretty easy game there against Ball State. But Ohio obviously still needs to show up. Navy, I mean, they're done. I mean, their season is pretty much done, so they really don't have a whole lot of reason to show up in this game. Whereas East Carolina, I mean, they're already bowl eligible, though, as well, so it's not really a strong lean here, but East Carolina is at least senior night for them against a pretty dead Navy team, even though maybe East Carolina doesn't want to have to face the triple option or wing T offense here, but still, I would not want to be on Navy in that one. Mississippi State and Ole Miss, I had mentioned I thought Ole Miss might be in a dream crusher here because they lost a third game, but there is kind of the potential that, I don't know, man. I mean, there is maybe the potential that a 3-loss team from the SEC will get into the playoff, but it won't be Ole Miss. It'll probably be Alabama if any of those teams get in. So I'll talk about it for tomorrow's slate, but I don't actually think Alabama is quite in the dream crusher spot. Ole Miss, I actually think probably is. I think their chances to make the playoffs are probably around 5% at best. So I think they can kiss that goodbye. The problem is Mississippi State is so bad. I understand Ole Miss probably is not going to have a lot of motivation in this game. Mississippi State, it's a question of can they even compete, basically. Ole Miss is down from 26.5 to 24.5, though, but 50% of the cash on them, 54% of tickets on the other side of Mississippi State. I would still lean at taking the points with Mississippi State because this is going to be their bowl game. I mean, they're not going to a bowl. They want to show up and play decently against Ole Miss, who is the bigger brother to them in the state of Mississippi here. Mississippi State has been so down. So that's kind of the way I look at that. That one there, Ole Miss is almost in the dream crusher spot. They are. So I would look to fade Ole Miss. I just don't want to, actually put any stake on Mississippi State there. Liberty and Sam Houston, these teams are both vying to get into the Conference USA championship game, I believe, is they're sitting in this cluster of 5-2 teams here, so that's a big game too. Jacksonville State, I think, is already in, but these other teams are still fighting to get in. Texas State, South Alabama. This is interesting. South Alabama, they were already bowl eligible. They got bowl eligibility last week. But I think they have the tiebreaker against Louisiana. So it's them, Arkansas State, and Louisiana in the West Sun Belt here. And whoever wins the West is going to be in the Sun Belt Championship. And I think South Alabama could still do it if they win and Louisiana loses, because South Alabama has a tiebreaker against them. And I think they would also need Arkansas State to lose. So it's somewhat unlikely, but I think they just need to show up and win this game and kind of just let the cards fall. So I do think they still have motivation here. Whereas Texas State, they're already bowl eligible, but they don't really have anything to play for because they're out of it. They're behind South Alabama in this West Division here. I mean, really the only thing they would have to play for is to spoil South Alabama's season as far as like getting into the Sun Belt Championship. But is that really that much of a motivator? I'm not so sure about that. So South Alabama looks like it would be the side there. Texas State is public, 60% of the tickets, only 55% of the cash, down from 1.5 to 1. So South Alabama looks like the market indicators are on them as well. So that's the way I lean there. My other play is here. San Jose State -2 or 2.5, I think, is also out there. But I'm going to fade Stanford here. I mean, Stanford, they have nothing left to play for. And they pulled off a giant upset of Louisville where I was on Stanford. It was a bad spot for Louisville having to go out there. It was like a 20-something point upset there for Stanford. Then they had another big Cal rivalry game against their in-state rival Cal as a 15.5 point underdog. Stanford almost was able to do it again and pull off back-to-back huge upsets. And they were winning this game by 5 until 2:40 left. And they were winning by 11. They were winning by 14 late in the third quarter, 11 going into the fourth quarter. They completely blew it, man. They allowed 17 unanswered points, including allowing a final touchdown after still leading by 5 with a couple of minutes left in the game. They gave up that game-losing touchdown, basically. So that's just brutal, man. I mean, that was their remaining big game of the season. Now they have to go face San Jose State. Stanford's got nothing left to play for here. I think they're a dead team, man. So coming off those games like that, that was their big step-up game. They're dead. San Jose State, yeah, they're already in a bowl, but they're coming off a couple of tough games against Boise and UNLV. Yeah, so that's a couple of their losses explained. But this is senior day, man, and they get to play a big conference team, Stanford. So I think they will show up for this game. And the odds makers are telling you San Jose State is the better team, although they do have the better record as well. But even though they're already bowl eligible, they want to beat Stanford, I think, man. They're still a little brother in the state of California, and Stanford's just coming off such brutal games, man. San Jose State, I think, is the right side. They're up from pick'em to 2.5 now, though, with juice. So the line is moving in their direction, even though Stanford's got 54% of tickets and what looks like 57% of the cash. I don't know if I really agree with the cash percentage on that one, or like agree that that's where the cash actually is, but I just think it's a brutal spot for Stanford. So give me San Jose State in that one. Yes, thank you, Charles. And then finishing it up here, Georgia Tech and Georgia. I mean, Georgia, they can't afford a loss, man. I mean, they're sitting at 2 losses. They want to get into the SEC title game for one thing, but they also want to make sure that they make the playoffs, so they can't afford to let up here against Georgia Tech. Although Georgia Tech, of course, is going to be motivated as well to face their bigger brother like this, and I assume they have King, their quarterback, back, which gives them an added dimension where they might be able to kind of score along with Georgia here, but I'm not going to be playing this game. I don't want to get involved in it. And then Nebraska, Iowa, I lean against Nebraska because here's the thing. I almost played this game, but the market just looks a little bit questionable to me right now. Nebraska, they came off that blowout win over Wisconsin, which I explained. Wisconsin was in a bad spot coming off that near miss against Oregon, a huge step-up game from them. Wisconsin had to go out and face Nebraska on the road. Nebraska got their 6th win after they were 5-1. They still had not gotten their 6th win. Granted, they lost to Indiana and Ohio State in there, but Nebraska, they just became bowl eligible. And not only did they do so, but this is the first time they became bowl eligible since 2016. And I'm pretty sure that every year since then, they've been at 5 wins with a chance to get the 6th win, and they've lost every single one of those times. So they have had like 8 chances to get into a bowl, sitting at 5 wins, and failed every single time, and now they finally did it. So that's almost like a monumental win for Nebraska, finally getting back to a bowl. And now they have to go out to Iowa on their senior night and face Iowa's brutal defense. It doesn't look good for Nebraska to me, man. I mean, Nebraska, that was their goal. They finally made a bowl again. They have nothing to really play for here, but Iowa doesn't have that much to play for either, really. I mean, they're already in a bowl as well. I know they started the season in the rankings. They probably had somewhat higher aspirations than this, but those aspirations, they don't have anything to really gain by winning this game. I mean, they're still going to be in some somewhat lousier bowls, so it's not really going to matter, but it is senior night, so they probably will still step up for this game. So I like Iowa here, mostly as a fade of Nebraska, but Iowa's down from 3.5 to 3, 53% of tickets on them, 60% of the cash on the other side on Nebraska. So that's just kind of crazy, man. That's, I don't know. I don't know why the market seems to be indicating against what my sentiment would be there as far as the situation is concerned. Definitely skipping Georgia. Yeah, the slump broken for Nebraska is crazy. Big red, baby. But I like Iowa there. That's like the first one that is left off of my card right now, by the way, would be to lay the points with Iowa. If you want to do that, I would not tell you not to do it because I do like that side still. And then we have the Disappointment Bowl, Utah and UCF. I mean, both of these teams, especially Utah, had way higher aspirations to start the season, and now neither of these teams are even going to make a bowl. It's just over. I do think UCF is better than what they've looked this season, and they're up from 6.5 to 10 now. I think maybe just because Utah's going to start benching players. I know Cam Rising's not coming back. Utah, really, they're the more disappointed team here. And having to go all the way to Orlando and play this game on Central Florida senior night doesn't look good for Utah, so I would lean to the Central Florida side, but am I going to lay 10 points with them? No, I'm not. And Utah at least does play pretty good defense if they actually show up and care at all, so I don't know. But 60% of the tickets on Utah, 69% of the cash on Central Florida, so the public still likes the idea of taking that many points, thinking the line is way too high with two 4-7 teams here, but I just think Utah is the more likely team to pack it in here. At least Central Florida's playing on senior night, and they didn't have as lofty goals this season as Utah did, and their season was completely dashed when they lost Cam Rising, and everything just totally unraveled. Central Florida, I just think, is better than they've looked throughout this entire season, so that's going to do it for all that. And then NFL, real quick, this is a horrible game, man. I don't even know if I want to talk about it. Raiders, Chiefs are in the afternoon Black Friday game. Thanks a lot, schedule makers. Chiefs up from 12.5 to 13, 77% of tickets, 74% of the cash. So the Chiefs are public. I mean, the Chiefs are coming off almost losing, almost to Carolina. Another close call for the Chiefs against an inferior opponent. So is that going to refocus them? Maybe, and I know the Chiefs had a weird game, I think, last year in a similar spot where I think it was around Christmas time. They had one of these weird isolated games, and I think they lost at home to the Raiders, and it was all because the Chiefs turned it over a bunch of times. It was just weird stuff going on in that game, even though the Raiders had, no offense at all in that game. If you remember that, I don't know, but maybe the Chiefs will have that in mind and want to show up for this game. The Chiefs do have a bigger game up next, though, against the Chargers, so I don't know, man. It's really tough to determine which Chiefs team is going to show up here because there are just conflicting things to look at as far as the situation is concerned there. But the Chiefs also laying 13.5. I know the Chiefs are a good team and they only have one loss and whatever, but how many games have they won by that margin this year? I think maybe 0 or maybe 1. I mean, this Chiefs team does not cover numbers. I think they've only won by double digits once or twice all season. And yeah, I know this is at home against the Raiders, so it's a game where they're more likely to do it than in other games, but I don't want to bank on it. And the Raiders, I mean, they're coming off kind of a tough game against Denver, a physical defense where the Raiders kind of hung in there. Now they have to face another physical defense in the Chiefs, so I don't know. And Gardner Minshew, unfortunately, I like that guy, man. He's my boy, the stash. He got injured in the game. He's done. I think he's done for the season. I don't know if it was a fractured collarbone or something or what it was, but he's out, and now it's going to be Desmond Ridder, I guess. It's not going to be Aiden O'Connell, who's looked terrible when he's been in there for the Raiders. So it's going to be Desmond Ridder. I don't know what they're going to get out of him. He's played some games in the NFL before, but I don't trust him really. And he did kind of march the Raiders down the field last week, and then they blew it at the 1 yard line because They couldn't run the ball, I think, at that point because they had no timeouts left, so they had to throw it. And they could have covered the spread against Denver last week. They were 1 inch away, basically, and failed to cover the spread because of that. Yeah, I hate the Chiefs, too. They're like the new Patriots. They just keep getting away with it. They get all the calls. They barely win every game. Pisses me off. I don't like the Taylor Swift Kelsey phenomenon. Kelsey, the Pfizer moron there. I do like their kicker, the Butker, because everybody got pissed at him for being a Christian, basically. So I do like him. Utah, yeah, their special underwear. Yeah, they're going to need some sort of luck probably in that game, but I don't even know if they care about the game. The way I would look at Raiders-Chiefs, though, is maybe towards the under, but the line's down from 44 to 41.5, although 41 is a key number in football totals. So if you're getting under 41.5, that's not that bad. And total 79% of the tickets and 85% of the cash on the over. So the over is public, but I just don't understand why. I mean, I know it's Mahomes, but this Chiefs offense is not an offense that lights up the scoreboard. And I don't know if Pacheco is coming back or not. He's coming back at some point, which will help the Chiefs' ground game. But the Chiefs, they do not light up the scoreboard. They kind of play a slow, like, grinding game. They don't score a lot of points. And the Raiders, I don't know where their points are going to come from against this Chiefs defense with Ritter at quarterback there. It seems like the Raiders are really going to struggle to score in this game. So this looks like an ugly, ugly game to me. So maybe the under makes sense. I would not touch the side in this game at all. It's going to be a bad one, an ugly one for Black Friday, and that's going to do it for me, man. One more time, I plays in college basketball, Maine plus 4.5, Northern Iowa plus 2.5, college football, Wisconsin plus 1.5, coming up shortly. San Jose State minus 2. Hockey, New York Islanders plus 130. That's going to do it for me. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. A lot of guys hanging out now that we have the days off here, I guess. We get a little bit more of a hangout going on here. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Follow me on Twitter, obviously, and follow the Tower Gang Podcast. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. You get that wild post show that we had this week. Crazy post show. You get pre-shows as well. You get hang out with us in a Telegram. Submit to the mailbag. Do it up, man. And just support the most hilarious offensive podcast that's out there. Thanks, guys. It's going to do it for me. Tower Gang Toad once again. Let's have a good Black Friday. Go get some deals, man. Get some nice shopping deals today as well. Get that holiday shopping done. Peace out, guys.